So we'll get straight into it. On this video, we're removing an old PVC window and installing a new set of PVC French doors combi. So we've already sheeted up inside and everything's protected. There's a blue tarpaulin sheet on the floor outside to collect any of the mess that we make. So we've just removed our timber to create our straight edge on the brick. Now we can go in a bit further to get the maximum straight edge of brick cut. You may have seen our last brick out video where we opted to use the water tank adapted to the grinder. On this one, because we didn't want the red slurry that would have been created from the water tank all over the wall, we just opted to use the 9-inch grinder and a leaf blower, blowing the dust away from the property. As you can see, we have gone along the bottom of the mortar and the top brick also. I know you don't need to do that, it just sometimes helps get you started, and it also helps removing the bottom course of brick, so that way you're less likely to damage the brick underneath, which you obviously don't want to damage. So I know you don't need to do it, we just sometimes do it. It also helps as well if you want to keep some of your bricks, because sometimes customers want to keep the bricks, say they've got, they're bricking up an old door, an old boiler, and they want to keep some of the bricks for the exact match. By grinding through the mortar, that helps you. Obviously you don't have to smash the brick as hard, so you're less likely to damage the brick. So obviously you've got to measure twice and cut once, as they say. So I'm triple checking that I've got the perfect line, where the line we're grinding is straight with the opening. It's also got the right tolerance of the doors when we install them. For anybody new installing windows and doors, as a guideline, you have about a 10mm tolerance. So that's 5mm either side. Although sometimes on a window, I like a tighter tolerance than that. I want it almost as tight as possible where it can just go in. That way then you've not got a big silicone seal. On doors it's slightly different. You do need a bit more of a tolerance either side, so you've got that wiggle room to get your doors operating correctly. Once the grinding's done, we start by taking the old window out. It's pretty obvious that you normally do the grinding before you start taking the old window out, because obviously if you took the window out and then started the grinding from the outside, all the grinder dust would then obviously go in the property. So you always grind the outside, then you can remove your window. So this is Josh, one of our installers. I'm just in the background. I've got the job of going up and downstairs with the bricks all day. I'd rather be doing the brick out stud on the scaffold than keep carting all these bricks up and down all day. So we just use the recip saw to cut through the old window. And once we've done that, we break the welds. We've already removed the screws and split the silicone and whatnot. Comes out pretty easy, like most PVC windows. They're much easier than removing timber windows, that's for sure. So it does come out easy. And as you can see, we've got that clear sheet that's actually masking taped to the ceiling. Also, that was a bit overkill really, because there wasn't any dust going in the house, but it looks good for the cameras, I suppose. So we're just getting the first brick going. As I've said before in previous videos, I just prefer the weight of a brick hammer. So I have got a lump hammer in my toolbox. I just prefer the weight, and that's actually a proper brick hammer. It's an Ox Tools brick hammer, and it's just not as heavy as a lump hammer. A lump hammer, after you've been using it a while and you sort of stood at that awkward height, your arm starts aching. So I know sometimes people saying like, I can't believe you're not using a lump hammer, but it's just my personal preference. We could have picked a better day for doing it on as well. It was chucking it down all day in Manchester, very typical. So you just got to get used to it when you live in the north. It seems to be raining most of the time really. So as you can see, Josh has had to put his coat on, but shortly he has to take it back off because it's too warm, which is just typical. So the window fitting gods was with us on this one. You can see that nice easy Thermalite inside skim. Anybody who's done brick outs knows that feeling when you take the outside skim off and then you see another wall of red brick in front of you and you're just thinking, oh, I've got to go do it all again now on the inside. And obviously on the inside you're more likely to get dust in the house, so this Thermalite block was a godsend and yeah, a nice surprise. As I mentioned before, we've got a blue tarpaulin sheet outside as well, just collecting any insulation that just drops on the floor. It's always a pain, the insulation, it just gets everywhere. So Josh dismantles this inside Thermalite block pretty easy. I've got the hard job of keep taking all these boxes to the van at the other end of the house. Quite a big house as well, so I got my steps in that day, that's for sure. It's just a quick image to see from the outside how we had it set up. You can also see Jack on the right hand side installing a window. Moment of truth, getting the doors in. I'm stood on the scaffolding, taking all the weight of the doors. I must admit on this one, they fit absolutely perfect. It was really seamless. And then we just fix it up. I've already packed it level and straight, just making sure we don't bend the frame when we're fixing it. You can see the cavity closers already installed. Whilst you don't necessarily need it, we have got DPC running from the external brick to the internal brick, just to cover, to protect the timber window board when we install it to the floor later. And it just stops the dust being blown all over as well. Torn and healing the glass now. So I've put the bridging packers in. The glass is obviously toughened, so I don't necessarily need gloves because there's no sharp edges. So I'm torn and healing the glass to take the weight, so these doors don't drop and end up catching. The doors open in as well, so you have to be a bit more particular on how you set up the doors. You'll see in a moment. I see I'm just checking now that I've not over torn and healed the doors, because it's easy to torn and heal the doors, but then there's a draft coming through underneath. So that's what I'm just constantly checking, making sure they're high enough, but they're also not too high. I will do a separate video just about torn and healing French doors, if anybody's interested. This is just a quick one. As you can see, making sure the doors are level at the top. If you look at the doors now, they're level at the top. That means they're the same height, so they should work correctly. I'm banging the beads on now, so then you've got to open the door and hit the lock nut the other way. Otherwise, you've bent the frame out. Just a quick tip, if sometimes your handle is grinding with the door open, there's a good chance that the locking mechanism screws are a bit too tight. So what I'm doing now is I'm just ever so slightly backing off the screws, and that will just then release the tension, and the lock mech will just run a bit smoother. Now I'm putting the finishing screws into the chute bolts. It's an opening in French door, so you do want to have the doors almost as tight as possible. So that way then no water's going to end up in the house, and the likelihood of customers opening them that much isn't that common. So you can afford to have them a bit tighter, because obviously you'd rather not have water coming in the house. So I'm constantly checking the doors as well. I'm making sure they're not too tight, they're not over-toned, healed, there's enough clearance. It's really important. You don't want to get to the last stage and then think there's something not quite right, and you've got to then question yourself, have I fit the doors as I should have done? They should work perfectly. If they don't work perfectly, then they've not been installed correctly, basically. The customer got their own plasterer in to plaster the reveals, and it's also having a new skirting board as well. So once the skirting boards have been installed, that internal timber board will be cut to the right size. But that's the finished result. PVC French door combi with windows and a glass balustrade. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.